The shameful and the painful 2024 Seattle Mariners season is coming to a close. They're going to miss the playoffs. I don't see any situation where a miracle happens where they make it in at this point. Houston clinches the division. So now it is time to do a full and honest recap and review of this season. And I'm going to do my best to not miss anything here. I took a bunch of notes, so bear with me if I miss anything. And a quick disclaimer, I am going to start with the positive takeaways for this season. So if you are strictly a glass half full guy, you don't want to hear about the negative and you don't want to hear about what I truly think about this season and this team, then I strongly suggest that if you want to keep that positive vibes for this team, I'll have it time stamped out. Just listen to the positive section. And when I get to the negative, just stop listening if you don't want to hear it. I respect everyone's right to have a positive view on things and look at things as like a glass half full, even though I feel this season is not a glass half full season. This season is like the glass only has 10% of it full right now. So I think it's a little bit dishonest to look at this as a major positive, but that's your right. So we'll start with the positive stuff, and then we'll kind of go through the entire recap and the negative stuff at the end of the season and the second portion. And one last note, if you have been watching my videos during this season and you don't want to miss it when they come back up next year, or you want to watch more of my breakdowns for the Seahawks because it looks like they're going to have a great year this year, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, please subscribe. It helps me a ton. And I appreciate every single person that has watched this season and kind of gone through the pain with me a little bit here. So let's get into the positives. And right up front, I'll also say some of the positive things I'm going to say are also going to have negative things kind of attached to them. So if I say something that's a positive and you're like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute, that's not really a positive, just wait. I promise I'll get to it. So first and foremost, the pitching staff. The starting pitching staff, we can all agree at this point, if they manage to keep them intact for at least another year, and they continue to play the way that they played this season, we will have a chance to still be competitive as long as they are together. That's not debatable. I don't think anyone is going to debate whether or not the starting pitching staff 100% carried this baseball team this year. Starting pitching is really hard to come by, and to have essentially 5 guys that you really trust to give you a chance to win every time they take the mound is an unbelievable thing to have, and you got to be happy about that. Cal Raleigh, another massive positive this year. You can make the argument that he is the best catcher in baseball. And we'll see how much money he makes next year and what the Mariners decide to do with some guys. But I hope that he is among the people that not only hopefully wants to stay with the team, but they also find a way to make sure that they can afford and continue to pay and keep on this roster because he's worth every penny. It goes totally unnoticed sometimes how much he helps the pitching staff. Even the pitchers have mentioned this year aspects of Cal Raleigh's game and the way he calls pitches that they trust him. They fully trust him. They rarely shake him off. They have full faith in Cal, and that goes a long way on top of everything else he does. A clutch hitter. He did damage when they needed him to, for the most part. Did a great job keeping base runners honest and throwing guys out when they're trying to take a bag on you. He's everything you could ever want in a catcher. And another player that I was definitely wrong about that I would love to see back on this roster next year is Luke Raley. I was definitely not 100% confident in him in the beginning of the season, but he showed out and he's turned into one of my favorite players on this team. He's one of the guys that has great energy on the field. You can tell it's contagious. He can bunt. He can play small ball. He's fast. He can play multiple positions on defense. He has unbelievable power. I think he hit the furthest home run of this season that I saw. He had one up in the third deck in right field at T-Mobile Park that was absolutely insane. The biggest positive of the season might honestly be Victor Robles. You acquired him for almost nothing, and since that point and how well he's played, they signed him to an extension, which I'm very happy about. Victor Robles was the spark that this team added this year. Even though it got a little bit reckless at times, we all know that. He's another guy that I cannot wait to watch in the outfield with Julio and maybe Randy Rosarena next year. I think he absolutely has a spot on this roster locked down. And if he continues to play the way that he is playing, that is another massive thing to look forward to next year. No doubt. And another thing that actually is going to kind of pain me to say this because I hate giving Jerry credit, But overall, I am extremely happy with every addition he made this season. Outside of Yimi Garcia, who I think didn't quite work out the way you wanted him to, I love Justin Turner on this team. I think he brings a veteran presence. People talk about him being a guy that's always at the cages, talking with guys, tweaking things. I think he's really important to this team. And honestly, even though he's probably going to be pretty expensive, he's going to give you good veteran at bats. He's a smart player. Another guy I would love to see come back next year. Randy Rosarena, I'm kind of iffy on. He did do some great things since coming to the team, but it seems like he doesn't really want to be here. It's hard to tell. And if a guy doesn't want to be here, you probably don't want to take a gamble and continue to pay him to stay on this roster. And it could just be simply because of the location, right? It could be because his family's back in Tampa Bay. He doesn't like being that far from home. He has every right to feel that way. But overall, the additions they made to this team, Jerry does deserve credit for getting those guys while holding on to all 10 of the top 10 prospects, which you can look at that another way. We'll get to that later. Another kind of positive that has some negative annotations to it as well is Julio did heat up at the end of the year again. So hopefully he can carry that into next season, but we'll talk a lot more at length about this in my next segment. But that's another thing you got to be kind of positive about, right? He definitely improved. You can't take that away from him. And a big reason why he improved, another positive, a little bit of addition by subtraction. You got rid of Scott Service, who I thought was a great move. And I think in any metric you look at at this point, removing Scott and Brant Brown and Jarrett DeHart and bringing in Dan Wilson and Edgar Martinez, it is fair to say at this point that the offense looked more productive and smarter at the plate and had better at bats in general. Wasn't perfect, obviously. In general, guys improved when you removed Scott and Jarrett DeHart and brought in Dan Wilson and Edgar Martinez. I don't think that's debatable either. I'm not sure if they'll be able to continue that in the next year, but that's another thing that we can possibly be looking forward to if they can get Edgar to stay. It seems like his hitting approach has definitely, at bare minimum, helped Julio out a lot. Another place where I was absolutely wrong was I had no belief in Josh Rojas at third base, particularly when it came to defense. Josh Rojas, I don't think it's worth the money, and I think he's not a good player because of how bad he is at the plate, even though he had that hot start at the beginning of the season. But strictly talking about the defense, I was really, really, really concerned about how the defense is going to look at third base this year. And I thought Josh Rojas especially held up really well defensively, made awesome plays. I don't think there were moments where a ball got hit to Josh Rojas and I ever felt like he wasn't going to be able to make the play. He wasn't perfect, obviously, but losing Gino, as bad as that was, we can all agree that was not something that the Mariners wanted. My biggest concern when that happened was I thought the defense was going to take a major hit, and it absolutely did not happen. Absolutely not. He held his own at third base, but he just couldn't get it done at the plate for the vast majority of the year. And that's a problem that needs to be addressed. But that's getting into the negative. We'll get to that later. Another semi-positive is I do think that some of the prospects that they had called up did look like they have potential to be good players someday. Tyler Locklear, I think maybe has a chance to be a good player, and maybe he'll get more chances next year, along with Ryan Bliss. I actually really like the way Ryan Bliss plays as well. The job he did at second base, I thought was pretty darn good, and he was another guy that is fast on the base paths, provides that speed dynamic to the team that you really need sometimes. And that's another guy that I'm kind of looking forward to next year and seeing how he looks. And last but not least, Andres Munoz was dynamite all year. Every time you needed him to come into a game and get you 3 outs to end it, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. It felt like he did it every time. He's shown that he is 100% the most trustworthy guy you have in the bullpen. And again, I judge a lot of things like that as like, what is the feeling I get when they come into the game? Do I feel a sense of dread, like we're totally screwed and that we're about to blow this game? Or do I feel confident, like, yes, we made it to Andres Munoz. This game's going to end. He's going to close it out. And that is how I felt every time. And look, here's the thing. I'm sure I'm missing some things here. So you can comment and let me know some other stuff that you're really looking forward to next season. And I'm about to talk about the negative side now. This is the time where we're going to start holding people accountable. We're going to look at this honestly without rose-colored glasses. We're not going to look at one section of the season and base everything based on that. We're going to look at the season in its entirety. We're going to run from the beginning to the end, all the BS in the middle. So if you don't want to hear that, turn this off. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Now let's get to the honesty and the hard truth of this team. Whether you like it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, this was the most disappointing, the most shameful collapse in Seattle Mariners history. This was a choke job. This was bad decision making from the front office all the way up at the top, and ownership all the way on down to the lowest level of the players on the team. Everyone should be held accountable. There is a lot of blame to go around, and we're going to go through all of it because this was absolutely an unacceptable season, and anyone that says otherwise is just lying to themselves. Again, this is not a glass half full season you can have. It's not. There is no glass half full to look at. The glass has about 10% water in it, and the rest of it is air. There's nothing in this glass. Or for God's sakes, if people are going to start saying that they trust Jerry Dipoto to make big decisions going forward with this team, I don't understand. I truly don't understand how you can trust anybody that has put the team together that performed like this season and blew a 10-game lead in the division. So let's get straight into it. At the very start of the season, Seattle Mariners, you got Scott Servais, you got Jarrett DeHart still in there, and you got Brant Brown, this offensive coordinator that they were going to try out. From the jump, this Seattle Mariners team, everyone could see it was not hard to tell. Red flags, white flags raised everywhere. Hey, this offense is god-awful. And there was a long period of time where we were like, I don't know, from the time of essentially 20 games to like 80 games into this season, there was a lot of talk about how you need to stay the course, don't make any changes, or early in the season, it's a small sample size. They're not going to play like this all year. There's no way. Don't make any changes. Just let it ride out. We'll see how things go. They got to get better, right? Meanwhile, Julio Rodriguez once again gets off to an awful start. By his standards, we hold him to a higher standard. Maybe if he was held to the standard of Josh Rojas, we'd say, hey, he had a good year this year, but we don't, right? We don't. Julio Rodriguez, he's the face of the franchise. We need him to play like it. And not just for 30 days at the end of the season, not just for 20 games. We need him to be as consistent as possible as a star player for the vast majority of the season. And let me make something clear about playing consistent, especially at this level of baseball. I think we can all agree all hitters in baseball are streaky. All of them. There's no such thing as a baseball player that does not have slumps. There's no such thing as a baseball player that has a hit or two base hits in every single game. It's not a thing, right? All hitters are streaky hitters. What defines how good you are in this league is how long is your streaks and how long is your slumps. The best, if you are Shohei Ohtani or if you are Josh Rojas, what defines how good these guys are is how long are you going to go if you're in a slump? If you go 0 for 4, what's the chances the next game you do it again? And then if that happens, what's the chances that you do it again? And then if that happens, what's the chances that you do it again? And Julio Rodriguez, you're not allowed to have a 60-game slump. You're just not allowed to have that. You're not allowed to strike out 35% of the time and go 0 for like 24 at some point, 1 for your last 35, but still get considered to have a great season because of what you do defensively. That's just not how that works. And what defines a great player is whether or not you allow slumps like that to happen to yourself. And the thing with Julio is I understand that his worst is still better than a lot of players in the league that play every day. But we're not hoping for Julio to not be a problem. We're not hoping for Julio to just not play worse than an average baseball player. The Mariners are needing and hoping and paying for Julio to be a solution. Julio should be so damn good, and he has the potential to be so damn good that he single-handedly wins you games in multiple instances. And not only that, but come up in big clutch moments. Come up to the plate, bases loaded. You're down by 2. You got to get a base hit. Let's see what you can do. You can't strike out in the majority of those opportunities. And I think we can all agree that had Julio played at this level of baseball that he's played at the end of the year, once again, when it's the end of the year, Had he played semi-consistently at that level through the season, and I understand there's an injury in there as well, but that it wasn't long enough to totally account for the entirety of this baseball season, you probably win this division. You make the playoffs if Julio plays at the level of baseball we know he can play at all year. You don't miss the playoffs. And going into next season, this is by far the biggest offseason of his career. This next season is going to be the biggest season of his career up to this point. You got 10 games for me. And I said this earlier. Next season, there is no small sample size talk. There is no it's okay to get a slow start. There is no it's okay to punt games and let them figure shit out. Okay? That's done. We're done with that. It's over. You get 10 games next year before I personally start losing my faith in you. So it's about 40 at-bats, right? Roughly. You get 10 games to figure your shit out, and either you're playing at an elite level or you're not an elite player. And I know there's a lot of feelings involved here. It's not a lot of facts, but we've seen this too much from him. But going back, beginning of the season, everybody didn't take a genius to know this offense stunk. Absolutely stunk. Changes needed to be made. And for some reason, the only thing that really changed up until the trade deadline was Brant Brown got fired. Offensive coordinator. That was a weird thing to kind of try. I don't think many baseball teams really do that, but they fired him. That was the only change that they were really willing to make up until the trade deadline, which is just unacceptable to just sit there and watch your team still somehow win games, regardless of every statistic you look at saying that this baseball team is the worst offense in baseball. That's not debatable either. By the way, folks, it's not. You can't have a combination of the lowest batting average in baseball and the highest strikeout rate in baseball with the least runs scored. I'm talking about the entirety of the season, not some select time frame of like 20 games you want to look at. I'm looking at the whole season. I mean, maybe you want to say, no, they're not the worst. They're the second worst or the third worst. That's beyond unacceptable to just sit there and watch that happen. And I'm talking about Jerry Dipoto in that, just sitting there watching that happen. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, wait, you know what? There was another change that they made, and I think it was before the trade deadline. Ty France. They moved off of Ty France, and it was in very unprofessional manner, which was a theme for this year with moving off guys in an unprofessional way, and we'll get to that. But starting with Ty France, for some reason, he was the other guy that you want to scapegoat in this situation. And I was one of Ty France's biggest defenders this year. And it's not even because I felt like Ty France was playing well. It was because even when Ty France wasn't playing up to his standard of baseball, which we know he can play at, and then he moves from the Mariners and goes and plays for the Reds and then plays at that level of baseball, everyone knows he can play at. It wasn't even because of that. It was because Ty France this year, at his worst, and no matter how much you hated him, was still the third best hitter on your team. At worst, the third best hitter on your team. And it frustrated me that they decided he was going to be the one that gets scapegoated here among the players, because he's the only guy that kind of provides you the style of offense that you really needed this year. You needed guys that were more likely to put the ball in play. And even though he had strikeout issues this season, more than he's normally had, he's a slap hitter. And I know that you don't like that at the first base position. You need some slug. You need a guy with power. And on top of that, I know he can't run. He's not giving you anything on defense. He's just whether or not he can hit for a good average. But the guy, for the most part, is going to give you a chance and put the ball in play. And I think we can all agree going into the end of this season, you needed a Ty France on this team, especially the way he closed out this year. You needed that guy. You did. You needed a guy that's going to put the ball in play like a Justin Turner, who's going to give you more than likely a smart at-bat at the plate, smarter than all these other guys who strike out half the time. But no, it's okay. We'll get rid of him. We'll scapegoat him in an unprofessional manner, by the way. The guy finds out about it when he's not supposed to. It was another leak situation. Don't you guys remember this? They leaked it to him too. And this falls back to Jerry. The dude found out before he had to suit up for another game in a Mariners uniform. Even though he didn't play, he was available on the team for an emergency situation, suited up and sat in the dugout, knowing that the team had given up on him, knowing that he was not going to be there the next day. Cleaned out his locker after the game, gone. And even in an interview before that game said he wasn't a big fan of the way it was handled. He was definitely caught off guard, and I don't blame him. And that points to Jerry Dipoto again being unprofessional. And this isn't even a baseball thing. This is just like a professionalism thing with Jerry, too. This seems to be a recurring problem for him. So they move off Ty France. The team is still playing god awful. Removing Brant Brown didn't change anything. And they get to a point where they're like 75 games into the season. And by the grace of God, himself and pitching, carrying your bum offense, you have a 10-game lead in the division. You have a chance to still run away with this and make a deep playoff run. Yes, I think they still could have done that. And immediately after they had that 10-game division lead, I came up here, recorded a video. And again, I'm just a fan. I know I want things that are probably unrealistic sometimes, but they were getting closer to the deadline. And I said, hey, this is amazing. You have a 10-game lead in the division, but you cannot allow Houston to get back into this. The offense is the only thing that we really, really have to improve by this deadline. Even though the bullpen was never really all that great outside of Munoz, it was the offense that needed the most change. And I said, hey, you have to make changes right now. You have to find a way to acquire players and bring them into this lineup right now, no matter what, while you have this 10-game lead in the division. Because if you don't step on their throats, if you don't absolutely drive the stake into Houston and take over and improve your team right now while you have the 10-game lead in the division, if you don't make changes and then allow your offense to continue to struggle, and then it goes all the way back, right? Then it goes to this 8-game lead, 7-game lead. No one's making changes yet. 6-game lead in the division. 5 games. Houston's coming back. Still no changes made. All the way to the trade deadline. It's basically a dead even race now. The 10-game division lead has been dissolved. And now you're going to go make changes. Now you're like, okay, now we got to bring in a bunch of guys. I understand that there might be some details of this that seem unrealistic for me to expect, right? But by letting Houston get that life back and basically go into the trade deadline and be like, hey, it's dead even race now. It's like a brand new season. You've already lost. You have already lost. It's over at that point. It was way too little, way too late. As I understand, it might not be entirely possible to get all the players you want at the deadline. Or it might not be entirely possible to acquire players in trades when you're only 75 games into the season, right? It might cost you major prospects, like top 10. It might have costed you Cole Emerson. It might have costed you Harry Ford. I don't follow a bunch of the minor league prospects that the Mariners have, but I do know they're ranked among the best, and I think a lot of teams would have loved to have had them. And when you look at the teams that acquired guys like Jazz Chisholm, and you look at what the Yankees gave up to get them, and then you look at the Mariners who didn't trade any of their top 10 prospects and allow guys to just go to other teams because you're going to prospect hug and you don't think you're getting proper value when you don't even know if these prospects are going to be good yet. You don't even know. It's a gamble, right? It's all a big gamble. And if you're not willing to take a big gamble and overpay for guys and find a way to acquire players sooner when you have a 10-game lead in the division with the best pitching staff in baseball, then when are you going to be willing to do it? Because if that's not the time, when is the time? When is it a better time to do that? I guess you could say the off season, but we don't know. We don't know. What better time do you have than to know that you are basically halfway through the season with a 10-game lead in the division with the best pitching staff in baseball? It's proven that you have that in that moment. That's when you make the change. That's when you go in. That's when you start placing some bets on the goddamn table. But Jerry didn't. And it cost you the division. It allowed Houston to get back into it. You absolutely blew it. You acquired players for basically not giving up a whole lot, which is great. But that also tells me you could have done a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more than what you did. And you could have done it sooner. I truly believe that. You can't tell me if you go to a team and say, hey, we want Jazz Chisholm. Here's Colt Emerson and Harry Ford. Can we have them when we're 75 games into the season? Is that possible? Randy Arozarena, Justin Turner. You couldn't have got these guys sooner? I call bullshit. Not to mention Jerry. you put together this offense. Even though you had to salary dump a couple guys and you had to give up a player or two that you didn't really want to have to do, you still had assets to work with, and you still put together the worst offense in baseball this season. You still put together the worst offense possibly in Mariners history, and you put together a team that you said you did not want to strike out more than last season. You put together a team that is going to get close to breaking the all-time strikeout record. Everything that I have said in that segment right there should tell you you have no faith in Jerry Dipoto. You should have absolutely no faith in this guy. Maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe we'll be wrong, but I have lost all faith in him. It's over for me with Jerry. It's over. Not to mention the firing of Scott Service, which I called for. Definitely agree with the decision. Handled that poorly too. That got leaked. That he found out on a ticker on TV or something. Another thing you handled extremely unprofessional. Like, what? This guy is an absolute joke. Now let's talk about the players that absolutely blew it this year. When guys get fired and you play as badly as some of these guys did, I just hope that some of the players at the end of the year will come forward and say, hey, like, this one's on me. I didn't perform well. I played way, way under what my expectations were. And that kind of causes people to get fired. And I have to live with that. I want to see some of that level of accountability at the end of the season. Probably won't actually see that, but it would be nice. And one of the guys I like to hear that from is JP Crawford. JP Crawford had the worst season of his career. He did also have some injury battles this season. Your best hope is if you hold on to him, you have to hope that he comes back next year and has like a comeback revenge season. But the way he played this year, he also is another guy that lost you games directly lost you games. Can't hit consistently at the plate, struck out a ton, never changed his approach. It felt like he's just such a, like, it's either a pull hitter, 100% bomb, I'm hitting it hard to right field, or I am striking out. And every time I watch this guy's at bats, they just pitch him on the outside and he can't do anything with it because he's not going to hit opposite field. It's pathetic. I'm sick of watching it. His defense is average. You blew it this season. JP, you blew it. You're one of the people that caused you to lose a bunch of games. Jorge Polanco, it's tough because, again, he's another guy that at the end of the season heated up finally, but you can't play as poorly as he did for essentially the first 50 or 60% of the year and be like, that's totally fine because they played well for like a month or two at the end. It's unacceptable. Another guy that had high expectations, another guy that has to also wear this and take some accountability. Another second baseman that came into the Mariners organization and just immediately played like dog crap. It was so hard to watch. I was definitely calling for him to be DFA'd. I was like, let's just get this guy off the team. He's eating at bat. Maybe they pick him up after this year and they give him another chance, but I'm not going to miss him if he's gone. Now let's talk about the Mitches. And you know what? Actually, you know what? No, let's not talk about the Mitches because I think Mitch Haniger, you kind of knew what you were going to get. And for the most part, you got kind of what you were asking for with him. You know, he's not going to come in and give you awesome defense. You know, he's not going to come in and hit for a high average. He's just a guy that, you know, he's going to do a good job at T-Mobile Park and he can hit left-handed pitching pretty well. You kind of know what you're going to get with him, and that's kind of what you got. Now, he's expensive as hell for what you're getting. I agree with that, but he is not the biggest problem, Mitch, on this team. As a matter of fact, I think the worst thing that Mitch Haniger did this season was say that the Mariners were better than the Detroit Tigers. I just openly said it, even though the Tigers handed them their ass. And then the Tigers are actually going to go on and likely make the playoffs. And the Mariners are actually going to be the ones sitting at home watching it. Maybe take a little bit of responsibility on that end as well. But that was my biggest issue with Mitch Haniger this year was bad defense and just a terrible comment that was uncalled for. But Mitch Garver, in terms of how many at-bats he got and how many opportunities he had to play in general, taking all of that into account with his statistics and how he played this year, maybe some guys will go back and look at short-term period of time guys that played. But I think for an entirety of a season, for the amount of at-bats that he got, might have had the worst offensive season a Mariners player maybe has ever had. The dude hit for like a 167 average and was absolutely atrocious at the plate. And for some reason, it didn't matter how many times he came up and was in a big moment, another bases loaded or guys on second and third with one out. And the season is essentially hanging in the balance and you need to score these runs. And then Mitch Garver comes up to the plate and you just are like, oh, it's an out. It's an out. It's over. I'm not even going to watch his at bat because I know what's going to happen. And I know he went through a rough patch this season. I know it was a hard time. So I don't want to really claw into this guy, but he does not deserve a spot on this roster. He does not deserve any more at bats. He does not deserve another chance to sit behind the plate and catch any of the Mariners pitchers. I don't care what it takes to get this guy off this team. I have lost all faith. I do not think there's going to be a comeback season. I think the Mariners should heavily look into giving up substantial prospect or prospects to get off of his money so you can use it elsewhere next season. That's probably unrealistic because the Mariners ownership is cheap as hell. Most teams would probably have just ate this guy's money 30 games into the season. And I'm not even kidding. Most teams would have just been like, we'll just eat the 12 or 14 million we owe you. We'll just let you walk because we cannot watch you play and take any more at-bats for this team. And that's going to be kind of my final point to really hammer home just how bad this season was. I want everyone to like imagine just for a second that this type of season happened to any serious organization. Like imagine this was the Yankees. Imagine this was the Dodgers. Imagine this was the Phillies. Imagine it was the Red Sox, right? Real, like, polished organizations. What do you think happens to the guys on the roster, the guys that run the team, the guys that put the team together? What do you think happens to those guys after a season like this? Seriously, imagine what would happen if a team performed as badly as this Mariners offense did in any of those organizations. How many people do you think keep their jobs and get to have another chance next year? I would be willing to bet they totally uproot this entire roster and ownership because they probably have a real ownership. Just like we're eating the cost of all of this and we're just starting over. All you guys are gone. Everybody's fired. Get out of this organization, but not the Mariners. We're probably going to have essentially a run it back year with all of these guys. And the GM that put all of this together is going to be coming back and likely coming back for a few years. And I don't understand how anyone has faith in him after what this season was. I have no faith. There's no reason to have faith. I don't understand it. And last but not least, it is not a secret. Every single person knows ownership is still the number one problem with this baseball team. A real ownership group or a single owner, whoever it is, would have paid the money necessary to make changes to make this a better season. Real ownership would have found someone else to run this team. Real ownership would have held guys more accountable, and real ownership at the end of the day would have spent more money to take chances on more guys and bring them into this team and try to have a good season. And the Mariners don't have that. And I don't think there's a way out of that, to be honest with you. I mean, you can just hope that somebody offers them a massive check like Jeff Bezos comes in is like, I'll give you $1 trillion for the Seattle Mariners. But that's probably the only way that that changes. And I don't think a boycott is realistic. I don't really want one anyways. We still get to have a professional baseball team in the Pacific Northwest, so we get to watch regardless of ownership. It sucks that they get to have profit from that. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And no matter what happens, I will be doing more breakdowns next year. I will be still covering the Seattle Mariners, and I will also be covering the Seahawks going into this NFL season. So if you watch to this point and you're a true sicko for sports just like me, and you enjoy this stuff and you enjoyed my content, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on stuff coming up either this year or next year. I'll probably still talk some Mariners in the offseason when big things happen. Or if a miracle happens and they make the playoffs somehow, which I don't think they're going to, that'll all still be here. So thank you to every single person that has watched, commented, liked, subscribed. You guys are absolutely the best. This is the most YouTube content I've ever done in my life. And I feel like in general, it went really well and I learned a lot. So thank you guys. And I will see you in my next video. Thank you.